participants or students to join in. So please, I would ask that you go on the Telegram group and call your fellow students to join in now. Session will start in the next 4 minutes. Thank you. Good evening once again, and welcome to today's session on leadership, more than a concept. We've already been informed on who is taking today's session, a guest, a Gambian guest, and look forward to the session. So, Kemi Bojang is a legislator in the region of Kanifing He's also the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the General Council and the advisor to the mayor on youth affairs. He is the national youth leader of the United Democratic Party, the main opposition party of the Gambia. Kemo is a 2017 yearly RLC Fellow and a 2019 Mandela Washington Fellow in the Public Management track at the University of Davis, California. And Mr. Kemo, like we know, is a young youth leader and also a Gambian. I think this is the first time we're having a foreigner actually taking a session on polytracy. I hope I'm correct, or he will correct me if I'm wrong. And we're so excited about this, getting knowledge from other parts of Africa. I hope we have our pen to learn on leadership, not just being a concept, but more than a concept from a youth leader, a young leader like us, who is already making a difference. So let us welcome Mr. Kemo. And Mr. Kemo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'd like to say a good evening, Lillian, and good evening to everyone. Like you mentioned, my name is Kemo Bojang. I'm a legislator in the Kanifa municipality and also the national youth leader of the United Democratic Party. And I wouldn't say an expert in Nigerian politics, as I believe I'm a student in Nigerian politics too, but I'm very much invested in the politics of Nigeria because I have the belief and the concept that once Nigeria succeeds, Africa or West Africa in particular is going to succeed because we see you as our big brothers and we hope, things turn out fantastic for Nigeria as a country. Notwithstanding, I also have a very great pool of networks within the Nigerian political space, but mainly within the APC and PDP camps, within the young politicians and young politicians in general, and also with parties like the COA Party, ADC, SDP, NNPC, and NNPP, sorry, and other parties. So I have a very good network of young politicians that I know in Nigeria. And it's a pleasure to be here and speak to other influential and young people within the continent. I hope at the end of the day today, we would be able to exchange a lot of knowledge and be able to build our relationships beyond just this Zoom call. At the end of the call, I'd share my social media handles, maybe Twitter, because I am very active on Twitter, and maybe Facebook. So thank you very much once more. So should I go ahead with the presentation or? Okay, all right. Thank you. So I'd just like to ask a question, and it's more of a rhetorical question, but I'd like you guys to take your pens and write what you think. And I think it would be useful at the end of the presentation. For me, I'd like to ask the question first. Do people think leaders are born or leaders are made? This is a question that I like to ask a lot of people when we talk about leadership and when we talk about governance as a whole. And I'd like to maybe hear from a few people when we're done with the presentation. But personally, and this is my own explanation, or when we talk about the definition of leadership, to me, leadership is the act of, or the ability that an individual has to influence and guide followers or other members of society or an organization. And it's very important that there are certain goals that are set up that you as a leader guides and influences your people into making sure that you accomplish these goals. And it's very important that leaders inspire, leaders empower, they also influence change and also share their vision. These are things that we believe are very important in any leadership position or any leadership capacity that you're in. Because you cannot lead without having people behind you, but you must also build a team that is very strong in what you do. And the whole point of the presentation being leadership, not just being a concept. Leadership has to be in praxis. Leadership has to be in your actions. You can be very articulate. You can be someone that, once you speak, people listen. But if people do not see your actions and people are not able to learn from what you are able to do in a short period of time, your influence and your power might fizzle out. It's also important that you inspire people, and inspiration, in as much as can be done verbally, is more in-depth, is more powerful when it's done through your actions. And this is why leadership is not just a concept, but is also in praxis. You must also lead change. You must also be in the forefront. But it's also important that we also consider that you don't have to also always be in front to lead. You can be within the midst of people and be the voice or be the person that always stands out, or also even be at the back and be a leader. You must also be able to share your vision. A lot of times, especially for young Africans, collaborations have been our problem. We have not been able to collaborate as a group. This is why, for example, you have a lot of people doing the same things. And it has been something that has really kept us, in the back for so long. I always like to use an example, especially when I talk about sharing visions and collaborating and building synergies. A friend of mine, or a group of friends of mine who live in Senegal, have been able to build a synergy of young leaders, engineers, accountants, politicians. And what they have done is that they're always supporting the politicians they have within them when they're running for office, financially, morally, and all the support that they need. In turn, their political friends also within the same synergy open up opportunities for them in all different West African companies where they can utilize their expertise and be able to effect change. We, unfortunately, in English West Africa per se, have not been able to build that. But these are things that we need to be able to look out for. Yes, we might be in different political parties. We might have different ideologies, but it's better off if we are able to bring our similarities together than empower or look at our differences. Politics for me has always been of building allies. Politics for me has always been about building bridges and not burning them, because I've realized that it's a game of numbers. It's a game where people are always looking at who will be able to unite, people more. For example, today I can use Gambia, I can use Nigeria as an example or as a case study, and most of the presentation will be based on these countries. That we realize that our countries are so polarized today. For example, you talk about Nigeria, you talk about the religious differences. For example, you talk about the regional differences, you talk about, and so many other things. But we have never really sat together to realize that we have other things in common that makes us stronger, and diversity instead is supposed to be our strength. Rather, we have looked at, the amalgamation of Nigeria, for example, from a very negative perspective. Imagine, for example, if a country in the West had 200 million people and a very young population as their human resource. Imagine what they would have been able to do to change the realities of their country at that time. I think these are the things that we're supposed to look at. And also these are things that I believe will be able to really help if we're able to harness our demographic dividend. And from there, I'll also like to go into politics and governance. And leadership is key in politics and governance because it determines everything, especially for me as a legislator whose two main functions are representation and also providing oversight. Governance and politics determines everything we do. For example, you talk about how public affairs are conducted. I keep telling people that we must all be politicians. We must all be politicians in the sense that even if you are not partisan, but you have to be very active within the political spectrum to hold people to account. Elections for me are like an examination for us politicians, where our electorates or our constituents would mark our performance out of 100 at the end of every term to see if this person or so-and-so person deserves a second term or not. And it's the same for political parties too. You have to look at how far they have gone. We have to look at what they have done. And for us, I believe our room, we have politicians and people vying for office too, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So for us two who are vying for office, because I am vying for re-election in April, again. So I'd also want you guys to look at it from that perspective, that elections are more of examinations, and that it's based on our performances that we have done in a term before, or what we have done that will really get us into office. Yes, probably most of you have not held public office before, but your community engagements, the way you interact with the people in your communities, what you have been able to do, your track record, and many other things are what would determine and would prove that leadership is not just a concept, but is something that is very practical. And these are the things that you will be able to put out there to the people that would determine if you're worthy of their vote or not. And also, we must not also forget that politics and governance also determines how public resources are managed. For example, as the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House, I have an annual budget of the things that we're supposed to implement. You talk about my constituency in Canifing. We have budgets and then we have action plans and things that we want to do in a certain year. So it all goes back to the point that we must be very pragmatic. And in our part of the world, in as much as you're legislating, for example, but people also want to see development. People want to see changes that will influence and their life. That is where they determine if someone is really working as a representative or not. Even if you're in the house, you are arguing and doing all of that. But what they want to see is that the development that you're doing, especially physical development, has a direct impact on their lives. For example, during our Mandela Washington Fellowship, we had a discussion with Harris. He was the advisor to President Obama on African affairs. And it was more of talking about the China-Africa, because I had spent some time at the China Youth University of Political Studies too. And it was more of a discussion on China's Africa policy and the US's Africa policy on their foreign policy. And, he began to mention that the US does this, the US does that, the US does this, the US does that. But I told him that in as much as you're doing all of that, the average African doesn't really see it because it's more of funding, it's more of technical support, and a lot of these things. For example, China comes into Africa, for example, they build roads, they build hospitals, they build schools. We're not saying that they're better off, but for the average African, he wants to see how directly your policies affects their life. In as much as that you are, America, for example, is donating $2 million to AIDS research, is donating $10 million to malaria research. Yes, it is going to support our health sector, but for us, the everyday person, we really do not see how it affects us, especially where our systems are not very functional. Before the money gets into the national coffers, someone has already taken their portion. It gets to the research team. Majority of it goes into taking care of office space, buying vehicles and other things. Before you even get into research, half of the money is gone. The people do not really know that these things are coming in. What the people are looking at is that, how is my livelihood going to be better? For example, in the Gambia, China has built 2 or 3 bridges. What the people in those villages say is that the Chinese are the best thing that ever happened to us after sliced bread. Because why? They believe that the Chinese have made commuting and transportation easier for them. So this is what politics for us is really, even though we want to move it from more of what the eyes can see into policy and how it can really affect our lives. But in the end, it's about bread and butter, like I keep on saying. Politics around the world have always been about the bread and butter, which is the basic of things and how do we impact those things within our societies. Going further, also politics and governance, also determines how policies are designed and implemented. That was the example I just gave on China-Africa foreign policy, and also how decisions that affect the entire society are made. For example, when we talk about democracy, and it has always been a misconception for us that we think democracy is alien to us. And unfortunately, this is not the fact. In African societies, we have seen how direct and indirect democracy has played out centuries before we came into contact with the Arabian world or we came into contact with the West. We've always heard about our village squires. In my Mandinka dialect, we call it our bantabas, where everyone comes out. We sit and discuss about the things that are affecting our lives. And in Nollywood movies or people that have read history, you would realize that these things happen in our societies. That is what direct democracy is all about, where adults or sovereign individuals come together to determine the things that affect their lives. That is what direct democracy is all about. You talk about the chief, or you talk about the king with his council of elders. That represents indirect democracy, where you have people that are representing you, where decisions are being made. So for us to sit today and not really encourage our traditional political systems, for me, has been where we have failed. For me, I've said that in as much as I idealize our post-colonial African leaders, we also have to acknowledge that there were a lot of mistakes that they have done that has led to where we are today. Post-colonial African leaders failed in the sense that we were not able to build nation states. Nation states in the sense that since independence, we have not really built countries, we have not built nations. What we have done is that we have built countries around the colonial constructs that we have. For example, today, my country is the smallest country in mainland Africa because that is what the colonialists said after the Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885. We really never sat after we got independence to say that we are going to redemarcate Gambia to what it used to really be and build a nation, build something that is unique about our nation, build a national language, build a curriculum that would really that would really reflect the lives of our people, build a traditional political system, build an economic system, build a social system. We never did. The only things we did is that we replaced the colonialist and we continued with the systems they left with us. This is why the African educational system can never make an African man creative. The African political system can never make us the people we want to be, because the educational system was set up in a way that it was meant to just make you civil servants. This is why there are no creatives in our educational system. And these are things that we have to correct if we really want to move as a country. And also, I'm going further. We talk about foreign, I have spoken about foreign policy using China-Africa relations and US-Africa relations. And that's the point that where it talks about how a country relates with another country. We can also talk about the political leadership impacts on our life directly. And I think this is why, for example, I've seen a lot of campaigns in Nigeria about people getting their PVCs, which I think is a fantastic campaign. But getting it alone is not the answer. It's about also making sure that you practice your franchise, which I believe that I've seen energy this year that I haven't seen in a very long time, where young Nigerians are ready to actively participate in the politics of their country. So this is something that we also have to look at. We can also check the other slide, please. Yes. So qualities of effective political leaders, like I said, to make the concept of, or to show that the concept of leadership is not just a concept, but also it's a way of life, and also it has to be into praxis, where we also have to look at where some of the characteristics of what good leadership is. For us personally, especially as legislators, the respect of the rule of law and natural justice is very paramount in the work that we do. The Constitution, which is the basic rights and freedom of the people that live in the country, should supersede any other law that is made, be it an executive order or whatever. And this needs to be in consultation with every single individual that lives in the country. It's the it is the document that really determines what happens in the country and how a country is governed. So it is important that when laws are made, especially as legislators, which I am hoping that a lot of you are aspiring to become in the future, that we make sure that the interest of the people comes foremost and not our own interests as lawmakers or politicians or as leaders. We also need to look at transparency and accountability, which I believe that really should start with us, that you're accountable to your person first before you are even accountable to people outside. It's important that there's that sense of conscience and that sense of accountability where you as an individual realizes that what you have done is wrong or what you have done is right and hold yourself to account. Transparency is also very important, especially when you represent people or for example, you are in a position of leadership. For us, we believe that it is important that people know what we're up to and people see what we have done. I think this really encloses a lot of bottlenecks where people are always questioning what's going on, is because most of the time the people in positions are not communicating the way they're supposed to communicate or put across ideas or put across their, what they're up to. And this has caused a lot of issues, especially within our political spaces. And can you go to the next slide, please? Also, decisiveness is very important, I think, and that is one of the main characters of how leadership is something practical, is that making decisions. Indecision is a weakness, and effective leaders are able to make key decisions in a timely manner. Decisions are made in the best interest of the people after due consultations and putting all key factors are put into consideration. A lot of times, as leaders, one of our main weaknesses is that we tend to make decisions on behalf of people without really consulting them. And I think this is where having a consensus on decisions are very important. That, for example, when you begin from the village level, especially in our political parties, where you have the village executive, then you come to the ward executives, you come to the constituencies, and I think in Nigeria you have the senatorial districts too. So it's very important that before you, in as much as you want to be decisive, you have to also consult people. That there's a general consensus where you sit with people, discuss before a decision is made. But also, it doesn't mean that when or whatever they say needs to be what is done. Sometimes you also have to look at the interests of everyone, more so, especially when there's a division in what should be done. As a leader, you have to be decisive and make sure that you face the challenges head on. Whatever consequences come later, you can focus on that. But what is important at a certain period of time is to make a decision. Not everything is going to be easy as bread and butter. Sometimes you have to make very crucial and very tough decisions, but that's what leadership is all about. And for me, I think being decisive is one of the biggest characters, that leadership is not just a concept, but it's more of something that's practical. And going further, like I said, then there needs to be a vision, and then there needs to be purpose. You don't just lead people because you want to lead people. You lead people because you have an agenda that you're working towards, and it has to be an agenda for all, an agenda that is going to include everyone and take everyone along. And your purpose too as a leader has to be very defined, because this is what really will push the agenda or the vision that you have. Can you go to the next one? Also, consensus building, like I said, before you make a decision, there needs to be consensus building. There must be a consensus of orientation between the people and their representatives. For example, an example that I like to use is the way we make budgets in the Gambia, especially for our constituencies, that we have participatory budgeting, which means that the people have to participate in the making of the budget of their constituencies. So you have to go back to the people and ask them priorities that they have to work on. And then this is what you bring to the Accountant General of the region, who then includes it in the budget for the region, and then people work on it. Then it goes to the House, you debate on it. Sometimes they cut. You have to really bank on and then defend why you have so and so in the budget. So consensus building is very important, and then this is where also the representation really comes in. And you have to be able to have that relationship between you and your people. This is why I've always said that leadership is not just a concept, but has to be in praxis. Going forward also, you have to be a great communicator. I remember my mentor and the party leader of the UDP used to say that a leader needs to have a big mouth, a leader needs to have big eyes, and a leader needs to have big ears. What he means is that as a leader, you need to be very vocal and be the voice of your people, translating into the big mouth. You need to have big eyes, which is that you need to be very visionary and see where other people do not see. And also you need to be a good listener, which is why you have big ears. So all of this put together is what really makes, someone a great communicator. You see what people do not see by being observant. You are a very attentive listener. And also, you are a great orator. Can we go to the next one? I'm also being responsive. Listening to people is not enough. You must also be responsive and make sure that people know that you are there for them, especially as a representative. This is also a great or a big factor in communication. A responsive leader is one who acts upon concerns expressed by the people, but you cannot have these concerns raised if you do not have a great relationship with your people. It's very important that you have a very cordial relationship with your people, and not just your people, but because a lot of times, because of the nature of our politics and the patronage of it, we really tend to keep out a group or a certain section of society that we think do not support us or might not have voted for us. But once you are in a position of leadership, you are there for everyone. And it is important that you see things from that perspective. When concerns go unaddressed, the people lose trust and confidence in their leaders. One cannot be an effective and efficient leader without being responsive. Also, honesty and integrity are very important. It is important that you are honest. Like I said, it goes back to transparency and accountability. That I like to use an example here. My first year in office, and as the advisor to the mayor. So for us in the Gambia, the mayors are like governors. They are the second biggest or second highest elective position, because our VPs are our vice presidents are appointed, our speakers are appointed by nomination. So we really just have the mayors who are like the governors you have in Nigeria. So my first year in office, I had the budget of around, I think, 20 million naira in the youth budget, which is not a lot because it's a regional government. So from then on, I hadn't used all of it because because that was not my budget, but it was the budget of my predecessor. So I hadn't used all of it because we came into office just around the end of the year. So when that happened, I couldn't do a lot of activities. But people within the government came in and told me, especially from the account side, that you can work on little projects that would exhaust the money. I thought of it, and in the beginning I was like, okay, I think this is something that we could do. But in the end, because the whole plan was that once you worked on these little projects, you don't really spend the money on it, but then it was something that you could just pocket. I couldn't sleep that night because I knew that what I was doing, wasn't something that was genuine and right. The next day I came to office and I told them to cancel all the small projects we wanted to do. Yes, the central government did think of cutting my budget because they thought I couldn't exhaust it. But I was able to defend and tell them that that was not the budget that I made. And because of my activities, I didn't really use the money because it wasn't something that I had drawn. And we were able to even get more money the following year because of the projects that we had submitted, and then it got approved. And going further, that as a leader, you are going to be tempted. There's so much temptation that comes with being in positions of leadership. But what makes you stand out is your honesty and integrity. You don't want 10, 20 years from now that you stand for office and then someone says that he was the one who stole from our church, or he was the one who stole from our mosque, and now you cannot really run for office. So these are things that we really need to consider too. Can we go to the next one, please? I think that's the end. Yes, so it was a short presentation because I really just had a day to prepare for it. But I think I'd love to take the conversation beyond the Zoom, like I said earlier. So that's the presentation I have for you, and I hope you guys were able to learn one or two things from it. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much. Yeah, despite it being looking like a short presentation, it was very detailed and had a lot of content. Oh my God. You've really shown us that leadership is not just a concept, but a process, very practical with a vision and as an agenda for all. Thank you so much. And you gave us perspective from the Gambia. And one thing being a moderator is you get the privilege to ask the first question, which I would ask my first question. And if we have questions, please, we can indicate by raising up our hands or dropping it in the chat box. Thank you once again, Mr. Kemo. You talked about one of the examples you gave about in creating the Gambian budget. You talked about the fact that you get to meet with the people. Can you be more detailed in the process, please? Thank you. You're muted.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what I was saying is that we have a process in the Gambia called participatory budgeting, that you cannot prepare your budget if you do not show a report that you had a consultation with the people in your constituency, and you have to write a detailed report on what they said, how they said it, and then there's more so like a follow-up by the accountant general to make sure that it was participatory. So you have to go back to the people, where you have to start from the village level, then you go to the ward level, from the ward level you go to the constituency level, where you have meetings with all of these three bodies. So what you do is that you have it at the village square or at a hall where everybody comes, young people, different constituencies, they come, they talk about the things that they want in their constituency. If it's water, that's a problem, they have to raise it. If it's a football pitch for the young people, they have to raise it. If it's scholarships, for example, they have to raise it. If it's a healthcare problem, they have to raise it. If it's roads, they have to raise it. But there's more so like that participatory budgeting, that the people are taking part or participating in the budgetary, formulation of the country, or sorry, of the region, but they're taking part in the consultations and also having a say in how the money is going to be spent.
This is amazing. Like amazing. It's not just practices from the West we can replicate or copy. I think copying practices from other African countries, something I think I'll do more research on the Gambian political process. Thank you so much for that. We have iPhone. Let me unmute. Okay, let me check the chat box. Please, can you ask your question? Thank you. Thank you.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I must say that this is a very wonderful presentation. It's very short and sharp. The presenter talks about that we picked up most of our policies from the colonial masters, and we need to do a redo or do some other policies for us to move on. If he can give us more light for us as upcoming leaders on what are the processes that we can need to redo this kind of policies so that we will have a change from the grassroots. Thank you so much.
All right. I've had the question. I'll first like to ask two questions. One is that how many, Nigeria is a country of 200 million plus people, but how many people really take time to read the constitution of Nigeria is one. Two, how many people really know how budgetary allocations or how money is spent in Nigeria? That's two.
The reason, one, we have to look at the literacy level of people in Nigeria, in my opinion, and not just Nigeria, but for all African countries. What we mean when we say that we have to improve our traditional political systems is that not to erase what we already have, but to build one that we can use, sort of a hybrid, that because our people are more accustomed to the systems that they have in place, right? And then, for example, today we talk about the police, the police system. The police is foreign to Africans. Even the word prison, we do not have words in our local languages for prison or castle. In French, for us in the Gambia, we call prison castle, but it's a borrowed word from the French, which means a prison. Why? Because we had other ways of reprimanding people for acts that they have done which are not in line with our customs and traditions, and they were more workable, they were more fulfilling. But today, for example, how does the security sector work within the realities that we're faced with today? For example, there are so many security challenges that we are faced with. One, two, how is the justice system working in our favor when our people are very ignorant of the law? And then the colonialists have told you that ignorance of the law is not an excuse. But because these laws are things, for example, in the Gambia, I like to use an example. We have the Public Order Act, which was put in the constitution in the colonial time by the colonialists to make sure that there were no demonstrations, no revolts also by the people against the colonial government. Up till this day, that law has been used to reprimand political parties and politicians from expressing their dissatisfaction, through protest. That whenever you have to protest, the government has to give you, a permit to do it. Without the permit, if you do it, you're going to prison for 3 years. So these are all things that we have to look at within our justice, social, and political systems. That yes, there are some laws or there are some systems that are workable, but we can also inculcate our traditional systems into it. For example, let's say we have the Ujamaa system in our concept, which is more of a social system. You don't have to be socialist, for example, to call yourself a socialist by the definition of Karl Marx to really be a socialist individual. But Africa itself was a communal system where we looked after each other and also provided social safety nets. Why can't we have things like that in our government today, that you and I do not have to go to the hospital and then pay so much exorbitant amounts of money to get the basic healthcare facilities? So these are things that I believe that we can work on as a system and include our traditional political systems into our governance structure that will really impact and affect the lives, because this is a system that our people know, our people understand, and our people can adopt to. Up till this day, we are having problems as African countries. It is not just that our people are not capable. No, that's not the case. But our people have not been able to find a system that works for us. Why is it that all governance systems in Africa are literally the same and all have continued to fail? Do you mean to tell me that we are less smarter than the West? No, we're not. But we have not been able to. It took the West so long. It took the West so many wars, so many battles, so many fights to build a system that works for them. We also have to take the same process. We have to be able to build a system for us. It's going to be hard, it's going to take long, but I believe that it is doable.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you so much for that response. Latasha, let me unmute you. Please ask your question. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Bojang. It's nice to meet you, and thank you so much for such an insightful class.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay. I understand that you are one of, if not the youngest elected official in the Gambia. Is that correct?
Yes, I got elected at the age of 22.
So you are what, 27 now or 26?
28.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
what was it like at the beginning of your of your tenure. In fact, before that, what inspired your belief that you could actually take office and you weren't too young to begin to make change? Because we have a lot of the same problems. I'm just going to run through some of the stuff I said in a comment section, and then I'll let you answer the question. So I talked about a lack of collaboration, synergy, and wider vision. Of course, I know you are aware of the EndSARS protest in 2020. That sparked conversation across Africa. And I said, in response to something you had said, a lack of collaboration, synergy, and wider vision, I think was a huge reason why EndSARS failed to deliver its true goal, change. It got attention, but what is attention without the necessary momentum, to follow through? And then secondly, I've been traveling a lot around West Africa, and it's been a huge eye-opener for me because we have so much in common. Again, speaking to the commonality that you talked about. And the things that I found to be different, I just thought was just extra flavor. It made the African experience or West African experience richer to me. Then I went to Senegal, where I was hosted by a Gambian friend who works for the Senegalese president. And since then, I've been very keen, because I'm a journalist, on bringing together young politicians from across West Africa. Because people under 40 in all of these West African countries have similar issues: poor and corrupt leadership, unemployment, lack of access to finance, funding, slow adaptation to technology, poor investment in youth sports.
I think her network is quite unstable.
Yeah, I think we lost her because I couldn't hear.
Okay, whilst we wait for her to reconnect. I am very sure that we have questions to ask Mr. Kebo. He's a young leader doing amazing thing in the Gambia, and we already know what we are going through in our own country. Like, he's an inspiration already for us. Please, let's ask him questions. What is it like being a leader at the age of 22? Of course, it won't have been easy for him. Maybe he will give us more of his experience.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to answer that because that was the first part of her question. But I can just run through it until she comes, or maybe someone can ask a question, and when she comes, I can answer it.
Okay, yes, you can.
Yes, so it was terribly difficult. I think one of the biggest disadvantages for being an African is being young in Africa, because there are a lot of opportunities that you miss because of your age, and also because of the cultural problems that we tend to accustom competence and wisdom to old age and gray hair. I think that's even the notion behind judges wearing wigs, because people think once you have gray hair, you have more wisdom. And I truly agree. But one of my advantages was that I started early. I got into the political fray at a very early age. By the age of 14, I was already following the UDP, because it is the main opposition party in the country. And, I've been following, by then they used to call us schoolboy politicians. And we used to, carry the chairs at the meetings and set up the place. So I had already built a good relationship with the leadership of the party and also other members. So from then on, I started at the ward level. At the age of 16, I think I had my first ward position. From there, we grew up through that. Then I tried the following time, I tried the constituency level. But at the time, it's also important to realize that Gambia was going through a dictatorship under the leadership of Yahya Jammeh, our former president. So we had, it was challenging for young people to become opposition members or even take part in politics. And I believe it's almost the same for a lot of other African countries today, where, the political environment is not as conducive. But in 2016, I was one of the influential youths that led the fight against Jammeh on the ground.
And joining, we had written to our political leaders to form a coalition, and they listened. It was on the newspaper, and they listened, and we had a convention which my party won, the UDP, and the president, the current president we have, was a member of our party. So sorry, give me a minute. Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So at the time we had worked on something, and we believe that a coalition will be able to oust Yahya Jammeh, because being an incumbent in Africa gives you a lot of advantages. So as the young people within the different political parties, we had set up ourselves and then made ourselves more like a media group, where we went to the media to talk to Gambians and use social media as a tool. And she had made mention of NSAS. I think, yeah, we also saw how social media also played a part in that. But then for us too, it was very influential, because you could send voice messages, especially on WhatsApp, to even the person who couldn't read and write, but you could send them a message. Because for us, especially as Africans, we're always interchanging illiteracy and ignorance, which is not the same, because illiteracy might be from formal education, but that doesn't mean that they are ignorant. And in our political history, and I believe Africa's political history, it's the masses, the people, the poor people that have always fought for change. And once they have the change, it gets hijacked by the powerful. So once we got the change in 2016, I realized that if we, the people that really fought for the change, didn't stand and defend it, it would have gotten hijacked. And we were also complaining of young people not being in positions and all of that. And I realized that power is never really handed on a silver platter. You have to be able to fight for it to get it. And I saw a position open up. Because of the community I come from too is a very hugely opposition community, which is Bakau. In fact, my family has also been very, politically involved in the community. They wanted me to run for the National Assembly, but I believe that you could start small and then grow. So I tried with the regional government, which is, I think, equivalent to your state assembly, if I'm not mistaken. And then I had contested, and we were fortunate to win. So when we won, we began work. But it has not been easy, especially during the campaign. People are asking, this guy is irresponsible. He doesn't have a wife. He's a boy. You're going to say things that you're not supposed to say on the campaign trail because you're young, you're not experienced. But this is where synergy comes in, and also be able to learn from the older generation. I feel there's a problem we have it's not even a problem, but I think we're so much in a hurry. Sometimes we tend to lose, some of the valuable lessons that we can also get from the older generation. While as we want to be in leadership, but you must always also be ready to learn from someone that you are also, others are also able to learn from you. I would assume that majority of us in the Zoom call are Muslims and Christians. And for us as Muslims, the first verse that was revealed in the Quran says Iqra, which means read in the name of thy Lord. So you must be able to learn from people that know more than you. And that is the only way, by acquiring knowledge, that you can be the best in your own field. And hopefully we hope that in April we will get another term to complete what we are doing. And then from there, I am looking at trying the National Assembly. And from there, we see what happens. Yeah. So thank you very much.
That's a lot. That's a lot. I am inspired. Latasha is back on. I guess she still has some other questions. Latasha, please ask your other questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Kemo.
Hello, I'm back. Thank you so much. That was such a powerful response. And I'm a nerd, so I read up on you a lot. I'm really so intrigued. I already so you've answered my first question, which is like your beginnings and stuff. And then my next question was about the lack of what I see to be, I don't see young politicians across West Africa coming more together supporting each other, ideating, and so on and so forth. And then thirdly, how do you, your question that you asked at the beginning, you said, are leaders born or made? What is the answer for you, in your opinion, from what you have seen? Are leaders truly born or are they made? Which really speaks to what I wanted to ask about purpose in leadership and the reasons why people want to run. So yeah, thank you so much.
All right. The second one about the synergy, I think I also made mention of that during the presentation of my friends in politics. In fact, Honorable Kofi Konan, the minority leader in Ivory Coast, is a good elder brother of mine. And I was in Abuja just last week. I was there for 10 days. I had like 21, 22 meetings. I met people within the political space, the likes of Honorable TJ Yusuf, Honorable Obinna, is it from the ADC? Dio Israel is someone that I talk to frequently. The PDP youth leader also, Muhammad. We communicate when we can. A lot of other young politicians that I met, in Nigeria, and it's more of building a synergy. Like I said earlier, the only way we can really build a system that works for us and by us is by building and putting our powers together. And I believe that there's so much that we can do. Unfortunately, like I said, everybody wants to do the small little thing, which I have nothing against, but you're more powerful when you come together, like you said. And I also want to ask a question. You said you were in Senegal with a Gambian. Was it Fatou Kamara, or was it Khadija Tambajang? Hello?
I'm trying to see if I can unmute her.
It was Khadija Tambajang.
Yeah. Her mom used to be the VP, and we used to share the same party. Well, we still share the same party, even though she's not very active. Yeah, the mom is not very active, but she used to be a former VP. Yes. Yeah, that's my sister actually. So for us and for me personally, I believe so much in collaborations. I believe so much and that is I keep saying, it's not even bragging, but networking is one of my strongest pillars as an individual. I try to network at least today, I can boast of that I know someone in every African country. What I do most is that I reach out to people, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of times we as young people are very reluctant to reaching out. We might think it makes us look needy, but then in turn, it's also, what do you have to offer to that individual? You cannot be just taking from them, but more so also you also need to bring something to the table. And for me, be it Senegal, be it Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania, Morocco, Nigeria, Ghana, I have very good networks within their political links, and I think everybody should try it. So social media has provided a great platform where you can meet other people in your field. All you need to do is just putting a keyword, and then everybody that's doing that comes up. So I don't see why we shouldn't. For example, today one of my friends is running for governor in Kano State, Saliu Tanko. I hope he wins. PRP. We're all supporting PRP now, but that is something that we can build on. When he comes to Gambia, he stays with me. When I was in Nigeria, unfortunately, he was outside of the country, but we're always, in contact. You talk about the likes of Ahmed Buhari too. He's a good elder brother of mine, and then we stay in touch. So it's more of building that synergy, even if it's not now, or you don't really see the benefits of it now, but in the long run, it's going to be beneficial. And I have seen how that works for me, and I'm sure it's going to work for everyone the same way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Am I already following you on Instagram? Latasha Lagos. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Latasha, for your question. Do we still have more questions? Let us leverage on this opportunity to ask him so many questions. He has the experience. Let us ask him, and his experience is something we can always, not just amongst ourselves, but so people who cannot be in this class. let them know what a young leader from the Gambia is doing to change the scope. I have a question. You talked about in terms of accountability, integrity. I'd love to know now, as an essay in the region, when you're faced with, okay, you've been given allocations for projects and all that, have you been challenged or faced with staffs or advisors that maybe have engaged in corrupt practices, or like to tell you, Kemo, or maybe not tell you, but try to divert money meant for something else to another thing? What do you do in such situations? And what is the nature of politicians in the Gambia like? Thank you.
Now, politics in all West African countries is relatively corrupt, especially in small countries like ours, where institutions are not very well built. And also, like I said, we just had a dictatorship and we're now becoming more democratized. But one thing we have succeeded in doing is that making sure that I am not a signatory in any of the accounts. that is a good step in making sure that you really do not have influence, and then making sure that you have 3 or 4 signatories who, even if they don't get along, is the best. And making sure that you're following an action plan. You don't just get up and spontaneously do something. Have an annual plan of activities that you want to do, and make sure that you keep to it. Sometimes things might change, which is fine. We're always expecting things like that to happen, but make sure that you are you have people that are also auditing you, even if it's your people that you trust, your mentors, your family. Make sure that there's a sense of auditing that you're doing to yourself, because we don't feel, or we don't really pay attention when we feel that we are not being watched. There's a psychology exercise where people will tend to give more, or people will tend to be more obedient when they feel that there were eyes looking at them. I forgot what the name of the research is called, but you can Google it and I'm sure you'll find it. So it's more of also being, for me, and my faith system, I also believe there's someone watching over me all the time, and you have to be accountable for it. So things like that have been able to help. But I mean, like you said, it's very difficult, especially in a poor country like ours. All of us, we're not as affluent or as wealthy as how senators or House of Rep members are in your country. We are not as that. So we also have our own financial struggles here and there. But you just have to be true to yourself, make sure that there's that sense of accountability, and make sure there's audit, even if it means that you have to pay external auditors to audit you. Make sure that you're doing that. Yeah, definitely. Because there are not really a lot of checks and balances for you, especially when it comes to money.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that response. We have a question in the chat box from Miracle Noma. She says, what is your advice for a young woman who has the dreams and is working towards going for a political position in Africa or in a country?
And there are going to be a lot of challenges, and there are going to be a lot of fights. But what is most important is that you have to start small and then grow through it. What is most important, especially in politics, is building a base. Once you're sure that the base believes and trusts in you and are loyal, you can claim wherever you want to go. I've seen people that just jump one day and then want to become president, which is beautiful, which is nice, but we have to be realistic and understand the realities we're faced with. And I understand the question you're asking is because we come from a very conservative society like Gambia, like Nigeria, where patriarchy, is powerful, and it's very difficult to have women in leadership. For example, we are faced with the same thing. We have, out of 19 members in our regional parliament, we have only two women that were elected. So it really tells you that there's so much work that needs to be done. But one, it's also women need to support other women. I know women don't like us saying that, but I have to be honest. The biggest hindrance in women's leadership is other women themselves. So these are things that you're going to be faced with a lot of name calling. You're going to be faced with a lot of, opposition, but you must be true to yourself. And once you are able to do that, I believe, and then you are able to build the base. Maybe you can start from ward level, run for a councillor, from there, build at least a base, perform, let people see that they haven't made a mistake in voting for you. Build on that, try, another position that's a bit higher than that. From there, it's a ladder. And then once you're able to go through the ladder, I'm sure there's so much that you can do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Akuri asks, how is the political system over there in the Gambia? Does money play the major role in terms of canvassing for vote? What are the strategies that are used to gain the trust of the people?
Money isn't as, I think there's no politics in Africa as monetized as Nigerian politics. And I think that is where the question is coming from. We're a poor country, just 2 million people by population. So we're not as big. And our elections are not as expensive as other elections, one would say. But yes, money and gifts are still a big problem because it's a form of inducement. And we try to fight against it, but we haven't been able to do so. And I believe with time, if things don't change, there's so much influence that money is going to have. But you know what beats money in politics is when you're able to have a proven track record, and that development, you are able to develop, people that, like I said, people like to see physical things that can effect change in their lives. For example, let's say you're part of a party, let's say APC, PDP, Labour Party in Nigeria. For example, you come from a ward. Why don't you organize yourself and then have a cleaning exercise? For example, it's a rainy season in Lagos, for example. If, let's say, the PDP or APC youth wing, in Lagos, for example, is able to donate something like bed nets or something to Makoko, for example. These are things that would go a long way. That tomorrow, when you want to run for office, even in as much as there's going to be an influence of money, but people will be able to say that, yes, even before he had a position, we saw that he had us in mind and he was able to influence so and so decisions. For us, for example, our party, we have really focused on, even before we got into office, our country is a small country, so we just have 8 regions, and then the land size is 11,200 kilometers square. But we were able to dig at least 200 boreholes in the upper Gambia end, because there's a lot of water shortage and water problems because of the water levels. But when it's election time, we go there, people will say, yeah, these people were able to alleviate a problem we had. And at least today we are benefiting from their goodwill. So things like that, even if you don't have money to buy everyone, but at least, putting things in place and also giving back to the community will go a long way. In fact, this is why a lot of politicians would rather start with charity organizations, have NGOs, and then with time would have to dive back into politics, because it's a way of planting yourself, building a good, credible image, and then getting into politics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much on that. Quickly take Amanze as the last question.
Okay. Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My question is, Gambia is a very small country. At least I know there are about 2.2 million last time I checked. And their religion is basically Muslim. They are about 95% Muslim in Gambia. Then the rest are Catholics and Hindu, and the rest black, and share the other 5%. Then I'm going to ask, the Nigerian is a very big country compared to the Gambia. This is our Muslim ticket. Gambia being a pure, predominantly Muslim country, is there any way that the leadership of the country marginalize a certain kind of the religious sect or group, like the Christians, come out to complain that, oh, it's the Muslims that have been ruling us for a very long time and stuff like that. That's what I want to know. Because I want to know if the Christians are also well represented the way Muslims are. Based on the population census.
Yes.
A lot of population, 95% of you guys are Muslim. So is there any way, has there been any agitation by the Muslims so far, or sorry, the Christians or other sects so far towards leadership in your country? Thank you.
Personally, for us, yes, you're right. We are at least 90% Muslim in our country. But you know, Nigeria is a special case. We have to acknowledge Nigeria is the most populated country with at least 200 million plus people and 570 other ethnic groups. There's a high tendency that you have to be very careful when decisions are made. But for us, more so in the Gambia, we have not faced that problem because we are more focused on competence. And if someone is able to do the job, then we are of the religion or the ethnicity that they come from. Don't get me wrong, we have ethnicity problems here and there. And there's always going to be that sense of, I like to call it tyranny of the majority, that sometimes you even, overlap your powers without realizing that you've overlapped your powers as the majority, because maybe you are not facing some of the difficulties that minorities are facing. But notwithstanding, we haven't had issues like that in our country. For example, our first president, Sadaura Karaba Jawara, he was Muslim, converted to Christianity, then had the name of David, and then he converted back to Islam. So we can say we've had a Christian president, and that was the first republic. And by then we had a much more higher Muslim population. So we've never really had issues like that. And as a country, but if for example, we want to use Gambia as a case study, it's going to be very difficult because we are very, very different. So for us, it's more of what the person can deliver, and that is what we are more focused on. But I mean, I would think the same too is what needs to be the focus in Nigeria. But if the people or Nigerian people have a different opinion, I have as a foreigner, I have no prejudice or no problem with that. They know what is best for them, and they can take the decision for themselves. But then I like to use Oshun as an example with the past elections. I think the PDP won with a Christian ticket, if I'm not mistaken, or was it but I think these are things that examples we can use. Yes, it's a state, but also it might reflect what the South, of Nigeria really is. And we have to look at, we also cannot forget that political parties want to win elections, and they're going to do or bring in candidates they think can pull the votes for them. So if, for example, APC feels that a Muslim ticket, especially if, for example, they have a Christian from the North, might not be able to pull them the votes in the North. I do not blame them for it. I believe that they, in the end, want to win. For example, if Labour Party believes that having Peter Obi as a president and a vice from the North will win them the elections, I do not have a problem with that. If Atiku believes that having him being Muslim and having a VP that's a Christian will win him the elections, I do not have a problem with that. In the end, I think all parties are going to look at what's best for them and also what can win them the elections. So I know it's a contested position because I follow Nigerian social media a lot and I've seen the concerns raised, which are valid. I believe that everybody's concerns need to be taken. Like I said, you have to be responsive as a leader and you have to listen to what the people have to offer. But also you have to make decisive decisions and see what is going to deliver what we want. Like I said, to have a vision, to have a purpose, and then push for that purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kemo. You've really educated us, inspired us, and enlightened us. We appreciate you a lot, and on behalf of the Electoral College, we say big thank you, and we wish you well in all you do back in the Gambia. And also look forward to future collaborations with you, the college. I would appreciate everyone to say a big thank you to the facilitator for today. So I'll try to unmute everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Kemo. It's a nice time. We hope to have a good collaboration.
Thank you very much.
you.
Yeah, so I just also shared my Twitter handle on the chat. We can follow each other on Twitter, and then just once you follow me, just send me a message that it is from the Electoral College, and I'll definitely follow back.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, sir. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and do have a great week ahead. Bye.
Thank you, William. Thanks for the good moderator.
Thank you.
Also meeting some other people. Yeah.
Next week is your graduation. Wish you all the best. I'll see you next week.